Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Tower number 9, and I am about to play a league game here. This is going to be a best 2 out of 3. I am playing my Cunning Sabine build, and I'm playing against uh, my opponent, Paul here, who is running Green Luke. And we are going to see how this pans out. I mulligan my initial hand, not loving this hand, quite frankly. But we do still have we have a relatively standard starting play here, so we'll lead us off with an Alliance X-Wing. My initial starting hand had either an Alliance X-Wing or Leia Organa Defiant Princess, plus spec the Spec Force Soldier, but in this case I decided that I would rather have the opportunity to draw stronger initial play like the Green Squadron A-Wing or Sabine Wren Explosives Artist. Unfortunately, I was not able to get that with the mulligan, but that's how it goes sometimes. So my Alliance X-Wing takes the field. My opponent leads off with a Regional Governor here, so this is going to allow him to block a certain card. Hopefully he won't say Fleet Lieutenant. Wing Leader is probably the best thing to call here for him. He says A-Wing. Okay. Um, so the question now is, do I take the initiative or use Sabine's abilities? So he is playing green. So he is green blue, which means he probably doesn't have any removal he can play on my X-Wing. So I'm going to use Sabine's ability here to deal 1 damage to each base rather than taking the initiative. If my opponent were red, I would probably take the initiative instead to avoid a potential open fire to clear my unit, but that's okay. So his regional governor named the A-Wing. The other thing is my opponent is running a 30 HP base. Normally, I do think that running the I normally do think that running the energy conversion lab is better than the 30 HP base. That is my general impression, but um, so here what I could do is go for Leia plus Lothal Insurgent, or I could do Fleet Lieutenant. I think I'm gonna do Leia plus Lothal in. We'll see, but I think I'm going to at least resource towards Leia plus Lothal Insurgent to try to get more value out of my Medal Ceremony. Regional Governor hits my base for 1. I'm totally fine with that. I'm gonna swing in for 2, and then go for the Leia plus Insurgent play. My opponent brings out a Battlefield Marine. That is somewhat unfortunate for this play, but we're still gonna go for it. So then we're gonna do Leia, ready to resource. My opponent will be able to shield the Battlefield Marine using Luke's ability. Battlefield Marine, 2 cost 3/3 with Heroic. I'm going to go ahead and play my Lothal Insurgent. So then my opponent has to draw a card and discard a random card from hand. And I end up discarding a takedown. I am fairly happy to see that go because it can easily kill Sabine herself. Um, the shielded Battlefield Marine is not what I most want to see. That Governor blocking A-Wing could be annoying in the future if I draw A-Wings, but isn't the worst. We're going to use Sabine's ability for 1 damage to each base, and then we're going to pass. Oops. So we will see. Nice. Falcon and For a Cause. These are some solid cards. One downside to these cards. One downside to these cards is they don't synergize super well with the amount of resources I have right now, but what I'll do is resource the Fleet Lieutenant. So this turn I'm going to go for this turn I'm going to try to attack with as many of these units as possible, and I'm going to Okay, so my opponent clears the Lothal Insurgent with the Marine. That's basically what I expected. I'm going to have Leia attack the enemy base before my opponent can potentially take her out. So if my opponent had a Fleet Lieutenant, for instance, he would be able to do, or actually, the Fleet Lieutenant wouldn't work with the Regional Governor because she is not a rebel. Um, so my opponent has 4 resources, ends up using a resupply. Okay, so resupply, put this event into play as a resource. So that's going to put him up. Luke Skywalker will get to deploy next turn, but this is actually really good for me because resupply is a card that does not improve the board immediately, and it against aggro, I normally don't think it's so good. So in this situation, I'm going to be able to sort of play very, very aggressively here. Um, and we're going to deploy Sabine and attack the base with Sabine. And then we're going to Medal Ceremony and give an experience to the X-Wing and to Leia and to Sabine. And then we are going to pass. But I still have this for a cause for some extra reach. Nice. So now I have another reach card in K2SO. So the question now is, should I resource this wing leader? I think I do want to resource the wing leader here. This is basically just getting ready for next turn. Depending on what I draw, I may want to resource and play 2/3 costs, or I could do 3 and 2 or whatever. This turn I'm probably going to play K2. So K2SO is a reach card, 4 cost 4/4 with Overwhelm. When defeated for each opponent, choose one. Either deal 3 damage to that player's base, or that player discards a card from their hand. Obi-Wan Kenobi, not who I most want to see here. So he is a large Sentinel unit, and when defeated, you get 2 experience tokens to another friendly unit. If it's a Force unit, draw a card. So that's going to hamper me in the ground arena. Um, I can clear out Obi-Wan, but the card draw is going to be an issue. Um, So I'll have Leia attack Obi-Wan. So that's gonna do 3 damage. Sabine can then attack and defeat Obi-Wan while remaining alive, and dealing 1 damage to base. Um, my opponent should deploy Luke here so that if Sabine attacks and defeats Obi-Wan, he can give Luke +2/+2, and then draw a card with the when defeated ability. That would be very annoying for me. Um, and that's indeed what he does. I'm going to have Sabine attack and defeat Obi-Wan. He'll buff Luke. This is one of those things where it's like painful for me to have to do that, but doing it is allowing me to get okay, so he hits base here. I think I think that's a major error on his part. He's not the beatdown. He's gonna have the Battlefield Marine use the shield to take out Sabine, that's fine. Um, okay, so he took 1 to base, which he didn't have to. And we are now pretty in range. We're now pretty in range of reach and space, so we're going to deploy K2. So when K2 is defeated, I can make my opponent take 3 damage. I also have for a cause in hand, and I have these space units, which are going, and nice. So I hit the, so in this situation, this is why I resourced the wing leader previously. I drew 2/3 costs. I'm going to be able to resource 1 of them. Now I have 6 resources, which is going to allow me to play both of these cards. So resourcing that wing leader seemed marginal, but I think is ending up as a benefit for me. My opponent can easily deal with K2, but K2 will deal 3 damage to his base. I have 6 damage waiting in the space arena, which plus K2 is actually lethal if my opponent doesn't have anything else. And I have for a cause for some extra reach. I have red 3. My opponent is not able to play the medical frigate. That would be next turn, and hopefully I can close the game this turn before the medical frigate potentially deploys. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic about this game, but we'll see what my opponent has to do. Luke could defeat K2 in one attack. If he has a Fleet Lieutenant, the Battlefield Marine could defeat K2 in one attack. Um, we'll have to see how this goes exactly, but could end up being no, could end up being a okay, so he concedes. Okay, GG. Okay, so he says GG. That's fair. The game is basically over. Sideboarding. So I have the Disabling Fang Fighter, which is good against upgrades and probably a card. I don't know if he's playing lightsabers. So Disabling Fang Fighter is really good against lightsabers, can also disable shields, and is also just another unit that you can play for aggression in space. Um, so that's a reasonable consideration. Do I have any cards in this deck that the thing is, Disabling Fang Fighter is not like the best card. I think right now. Spec Force Soldier is a good card against this deck. Bamboo, yeah. So I could swap out the Bamboozles for Fang Fighters. Bamboozle also counters shields though. Um, and Bamboozle's free, which is a bit more aggro though. Fang Fighter develops a space unit. I think we're going to I think we're going to leave it. I didn't actually see any of the big lightsabers. So if I see the Jedi lightsaber, then I want to have if I see the Jedi lightsaber, then I want to have uh, the Fang Fighter as a more direct counter, so Bamboozle just returns that to hand instead of discarding it. Well, it does also exhaust the unit that has the lightsaber. The direct discard is more effective. So I think my sideboarding is going to end up with me just staying in my current configuration and seeing how that goes. And if I do get defeated by big lightsabers this time, we will add in the Fang Fighters later. But for now, I am fine with my current configuration. My opponent will get to go first this time. He is sideboarding though, and so we'll see what changes he may have made that will strengthen his deck against me. The other thing that, man, so maybe I should have put the Fang Fighters in. The other thing that they're good against is Entrenched, which is otherwise an annoying card to counter space. This is a bad starting hand. It doesn't have any unit that I can play. I can Spark of Rebellion on the first turn, but that's not aggro. I want to be aggro, so I want to be the one playing the early units, so that's going to be a quick mulligan. This time, it looks like my starting play is going to be a Lothal Insurgent. This is not the best start that I could have, but it's not the worst either. I have two other 3-drops, the Fleet Lieutenant and the Falcon, so we're going to resource the Fighters for Freedom, and we're going to, I think, resource Leia Defiant Princess here, since she's kind of marginal. I could also resource K2, but I like having K2 available. Hopefully my opponent will not lead off with Battlefield Marine, which would be a natural counter to my Lothal Insurgent. Actually, his first play is to pass. I will send in the Lothal Insurgent. The ability doesn't go off, and he takes the initiative. Nice. I got lucky there. It looks like he missed his first turn, and I'll use Sabine's ability for 1 damage to each base. Ooh, nice. So, and I now have a Wing Leader. So a Wing Leader buffing that Lothal Insurgent could be a very strong play. I do have a Bamboozle also. Um, so what do I want to do? I want to do Wing Leader buff there. Next turn is probably K2. We're going to resource this Fleet Lieutenant. I'm keeping the Bamboozle available just in case. Maybe I should just... Yeah, I don't know. My opponent passes. Okay. I will Wing Leader buff the Insurgent. When played, give 2 experience tokens to other friendly. Wow, he takes the initiative again. So really bad start for my opponent, unfortunately. Yeah, and he has a unhappy face there, and then 5 damage and 1 damage to each base, and then I'll pass, draw 2. Okay, so now I can Spark of Rebellion him plus play Sabine this turn. That's probably going to be my best option. I can deploy K2 later. I'm gonna resource the bamboozle. Um, yeah, so if I Spark of Rebellion him, we'll see what he has in hand. I can like if he has, takedown or whatever, I can potentially get rid of it. If he has takedown, he'll probably just play it on my Lothal Insurgent immediately. But that means he's not playing it on Sabine, so yeah. But I think we're gonna do Sabine Wren, Spark of Rebellion, deploy Sabine this turn. Attack with the Lothal Insurgent first if I can, because there is a chance of removal that could get rid of him. If my opponent has takedown, I think you got to play it on the Insurgent here because taking 5 damage is really not favorable. But we'll have to see. This is a very advantageous situation for me. My opponent passes. Okay, 5 damage to base. I think he may have takedown in his Hornet for Sabine. No? Okay. We're gonna see the Echo Base Defender. Okay, that's actually a pretty good card here. So I will hit the base for 2. My opponent spends 1 to shield the Echo Base Defender. I will use Sabine's ability for 1 to each base. I will, maybe he had that Echo-based defender but didn't want to play it in trade. I personally would just take the trade. I will play Unit Sabine. Opponent takes the initiative. I will use Spark of Rebellion. Wow, okay, so he does have the medical frigate. He has entrenched, so he has a lot of, okay, so this is a really interesting one, actually. What do I want to take? So the medical frigate will stabilize the game for him, but he has to get there. I could also take one of these other cards that is going to be more usable. So Entrenched, he could easily play. Resilient, he could easily play. Yoda, he could easily play. Bright Hope, he could easily play. Yeah, that's interesting. I think we take the Entrenched here, and we decide, and we figure that we can kill him before the medical frigate deploys. Um, Sabine deploys, and then Sabine attacks there, knocks off the shield, and takes 4 damage, and deals 1 to the base. You might think that's a low value attack with Sabine. Yeah, it is, but you know what? It's 1 more damage to the base. It's getting more value on the field, and it removed that shield. So, we're all about that aggro here. Okay, so I know my opponent has a Bright Hope, which he can put into space, which will potentially block my efforts there. Um, don't really have a great counter to that. So this turn we're gonna resource this Falcon, I think, and then I can do. Oh, or wait, no, because my Sabine, I don't love this. I'm gonna resource this Sabine because I already have one in play. If I didn't, I would go for Wing Leader plus Small Sabine, but in this situation, that's not really gonna be an option. Okay, so my opponent plays a Resilient on the Echo Base Defender, giving it +3 defense. I am going to, so Sabine Wren can't be attacked because I have units that counter that. Um, let's see here. I think I want to deploy K2 this turn. I think what we're going to do, yeah, so we're going to have Sabine attack, get defeated, but deal 2 damage. 1 damage goes through to the enemy base. And then I will be able to defeat that Echo Base Defender with my Lothal Insurgent this turn, who will herself be defeated, but it will open up the path to the enemy base. Alternatively, I could use my Wing Leader, buff Sabine. Yeah, maybe it's actually better to play my other Wing Leader, buff Small Sabine, and then have her. Well, we'll see. The defender can, of course, still attack. My opponent plays Bright Hope. This is sort of what I expected over there, which is going to be an issue in the space arena. He doesn't use the return ability, which I think is pretty reasonable. So if I use Wing Leader, he can just attack on the other side. So we're gonna have the Lothal Insurgent attack and defeat the Echo Base Defender, and the way is now clear for Sabine on the ground. Opponent takes the initiative, so then I'm going to have Sabine hit the base for 3. I'm going to play K2. And do I want to have my wing leader hit Bright Hope and die? Um, I can do, no, I'm not gonna do it. I can potentially clear Bright Hope by playing this wing leader to buff it, hit it, and then use the Falcon. We're gonna resource this Sabine because I already have one. But this turn, I want to save my Leia Defiant Princess here to exhaust Luke when he deploys. Hopefully, my opponent won't have another Obi-Wan. That would be an annoying obstacle for me here. We do know that he has that medical frigate if he hasn't resourced it, so I need to win the game in the next, 2 or 3 turns. Looks like there's not going to be an Obi-Wan. Okay, he plays a takedown on Sabine. I am fine with this. I will. Well, let's see here. So I could buff K2. Yeah, I think that actually makes more sense. I think buffing K2 makes more sense than buffing the wing leader. He doesn't. Oh, but if he has an entrenched, it's really bad for me. If he entrenches K2, no, we're gonna go for the buffing K2. If he entrenches K2, I'm gonna be really sad, but I can then use K2 to fight Luke when he deploys. No, it's gonna be a restored arc 170, 2 cost 2 3 with restore 1. K2 swings in for 6. Sabine 1 to each base. And we'll send in Leia Defiant Princess to exhaust Luke. And I have now basically won. We're going to draw, uh, keep this hand, no resource. I think I win the game this turn. So if K2 gets a chance to attack, he will win the game. If my opponent plays removal on K2, K2's ability will win the game. The main hope for my opponent here is to play some kind of big sentinel, I think. I can potentially push through in the space arena, and nope, my opponent types GG. GG. So we got the win here. This is went 2-0 with Sabine Yellow against a Command Luke. Um, and my opponent asks one more game. So I won the match, but we will play one more round just for fun. And this time, having seen some of that stuff my opponent is playing, the downside of the Fang Fighter is that it also degrades my for a cause I believe in. But I think that given that the opponent had that resilient and had that entrenched, we are going to substitute in the Fang Fighters instead of the Bamboozles this time, and have more of an answer. It didn't end up being important this time. I was able to counter that one entrenched with my Spark of Rebellion, but we are going to incorporate these Fang Fighters into the deck just in case. And now round 3, just for fun, let's see how this goes. All right, round uh round 3. I said you can go first, just based on courtesy for these rounds, but my opponent okay, well, my opponent says let's roll, but then rolls a 12, so I think he's going first either way. Okay, so then this is a this is a weird starting hand. It's not that bad, but it's not really that good. It's really reliant on X-Wing plus Wing Leader. X-Wing plus Wing Leader is a good start, though. I'd have to resource these two for a cause, probably. Could be worse. Mm, I don't know. I don't think it's resilient. I'm very reliant on those wing leaders. We're gonna try for something else. Okay, this is, I think, a more standard hand, so we're gonna resource, K. I'm a little late on units. I think I'll resource the Spark of Rebellion Metal Ceremony. Yeah, I don't want to resource a unit. I don't want to resource a surprise strike. Arguably, I should resource the local insurgent, but I want to have I want to have, um, I want to have a strong next turn, and I don't want to rely on drawing something. So I play Sabine. Going to use Sabine's ability, 1 damage to each base. I did draw some other units, so it might have been better for me to resource the Lothal Insurgent instead of the Metal Ceremony there. But, just kind of playing it safe. I think I think I'm gonna try to push on the ground this game. So we're gonna resource this X-Wing. Ready up. I don't have a great turn here. All I'm gonna be able to do is play a single unit. Gonna be just a Lothal Insurgent joining the fight, and I don't have anything to do with my extra resource, which is not what you want to see. My opponent has Yoda, which I extra don't want to see. That is unfortunate. I will play the Lothal Insurgent. So Yoda could, of course, just kill this Insurgent, but it's better to advance the board if I can. Ability doesn't go off because I have not played another card. Opponent's going to take the initiative. I'm going to go ahead and do some more damage with Sabine. But this is a bit of a slow start for me. Let's see if I can recover. So I can Green Squadron A-Wing plus Lothal Insurgent this turn. That's probably going to be my best option. I could also play K2, but K2 is more of a closer, and I don't feel like I'm in a great position to close the game. So Yoda is probably going to attack and kill my Lothal Insurgent, and then that's going to heal 2, which is very annoying. So then I'm going to have Sabine, I'm going to have this Sabine attack and defeat Yoda, and 1 to base. I need to get Yoda off the field. His healing is too much of an issue. But I'm starting off a little slower this time, and I'm a little worried about how this game is going to go. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what I can do. So I'm probably going to go for Green Squadron plus Insurgent. Ooh, my opponent plays Kanan. Do I want to? Yeah, I can't afford to let Kanan stay on field. I'm going to have to surprise strike him with my Sabine. That's okay. We're going to damage each base. Lothal or Restored Arc there. Deploy Sabine. Yeah, so normally you want to save Surprise Strike to use on your opponent's base, but in this case, I have not done enough damage, and I have to stabilize. So I Surprise Strike. I use my Surprise Strike to clear out. I use my Surprise Strike to the uh, clear out Keenan there. I'm going to deploy an A-Wing also, and then we are going to draw up. Okay, so this turn I have Spec Force Soldier, which is actually potentially really good against this deck. I think I'm going to resource my Lothal Insurgent here. So I can do K2 plus Spec Force Soldier. Spec Force Soldier is actually very useful if my opponent plays a Sentinel, allowing me to get more damage to base. But at this point, I'm feeling really behind in this game. I just haven't done that much damage to base in the early game. And my opponent has had some things that have been quite annoying for me with the with Yoda and Keenan making me fight units. So normally you just want to be pushing damage directly to the base, but in this case, I felt like the restore was going to overwhelm me if I didn't handle those units, which is not what I want to be doing. But sometimes your opponent's kind of making you play that game. Um, we'll see what my opponent does here. Obi-Wan can't be deployed for another turn, and if he does deploy Obi-Wan, I can counter with the Spec Force Soldier. I'm probably going to deploy K2 this turn. Okay, so my opponent goes here. This is a possible move. So I'm gonna just go for the base here, trying to push the damage through. I don't know though. With my opponent on a 30 HP base, I am pretty worried about this scenario. A resupply, not a standard play here, but sometimes Okay, so with a resupply, he's going to be able to deploy Luke. That's definitely something you should sideboard out in this matchup. But in this case, because of my slow start, it might actually get a lot of value. So I am going to just push damage to base. Generally, the response to Luke is to just push the damage, because you're not really going to be able to realistically defeat Luke on the field. So that's kind of one of those scenarios where you gotta just push. Luke will remove Unit Sabine. That's a good choice. You should remove Unit Sabine before Leader Sabine because removing Leader Sabine allows your opponent to removing Leader Sabine allows your opponent to use her leader ability again, which is generally not something that you want to have happening. So I'm pushing damage through. My opponent forgets to use Luke's on attack ability to give a shield. We see for a or it binds all things, healing Luke and doing damage. So should probably kill the A-wing here. That would be better than damaging Sabine. Yep, and that's what my opponent does. Well played. So I will. The plus side of this is that it is going to allow me to take the initiative. So then I'm going to draw. Nice, for a cause. Okay, metal ceremony I don't need right now. None of this is worth resourcing though. So what we're going to do is, yeah, we'll push damage to base with K2. So K2 attacking base, 4 damage there. The metal ceremony will now potentially allow K2 to get out of range of Luke. My opponent may play Obi-Wan here, which would be very annoying that I have the Spec Force soldiers to counter Obi-Wan. If he does play Obi-Wan, yeah, if he does play Obi-Wan, do I attack Obi-Wan with Sabine? I don't think I do. I think I just play the Spec Force soldier. Then my opponent presumably kills. No, wait, I can't play the Spec Force soldier. Um, okay, I think what I do here is, so if I attack, I think I play the Metal Ceremony to give K2 one. Yeah, I think I play the Metal Ceremony do I play the Metal Ceremony or do I attack with Sabine? So if I attack with Sabine, I don't know. I'm in a really bad state, quite frankly. I think I play the Metal Ceremony to get K2 out of immediate attack range. It isn't a great play, but then Luke will presumably attack to kill Sabine. Oh, he doesn't do it. Weird. Okay, if my opponent wants to play it like that, that is giving up a lot of value because I will Spec Force Soldier Obi-Wan. A unit loses Sentinel for the phase, and now Sabine's going to sneak in there. So Sabine attacks the base, another 3 damage. The funny thing is I have another one of these Spec Force soldiers waiting. And then we're going to play for a cause I believe in. So then this is going to reveal the top 4 cards for each heroism card revealed this way. 1 damage to the enemy base. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if my opponent has the medical frigate, I basically lose. So then these cards, so we're going to discard 1 fleet lieutenant. We are going to Yeah, if my opponent has the medical frigate, that's basically game. I'm going to discard Spark of Rebellion because if my opponent has it, he has it. Um, and we're going to keep Leia and that, and then we are going to pass, draw 2. So this turn, basically, my hope is that my opponent doesn't have the medical frigate or has it and misplays it. If he can play the medical frigate and do the big heal, I basically just lose. It's too much tempo. If he does not have it, though, I might actually be able to win this turn with Spec Force Soldier, preventing Obi-Wan from being a Sentinel for another turn, and maybe that gives me enough of a window. He doesn't resource. That means he doesn't have the medical frigate. Okay, let's see how this goes. I think I have a chance here despite being in some trouble. Second Spec Force soldier waiting in hand here to give Obi-Wan some grief. My opponent plays a governor. Oh, we can do governor for Spec Force soldier. That's really annoying for me. Yep, governor for Spec Force soldier. Well played. So that is going to prevent me from cleanly countering Obi-Wan. Okay, so what do we want to do now? So what we'll do is we will play Leia, Defiant Princess, and exhaust Luke. Obi-Wan hits the base. This is not a situation where you should be attacking the base, I think. But that's okay. So we're going to have, yeah, so I can have Sabine attack Obi-Wan, remove the shield, and one to base. I don't think I'm going to be able to get the win this turn, though, with that Governor blocking my Spec Force soldier. He plays a Consortium Star Viper, which is an annoying card here. So now what we're going to do is Fleet Lieutenant K2 into Obi-Wan. So that will defeat Obi-Wan. One overwhelm damage to base. K2 is close to being defeated, but is not defeated. And then we can still have the Spec Force soldier deal 2 more damage to base this turn. He is going to get Obi-Wan's ability, which will probably be used to buff Luke. I guess he forgets Obi-Wan's ability. Okay, I'll take that. Um, and then, so if he has that medical frigate, okay, wait. Can I win the game in one move? No, I can't. I could do five. Oh man, if I hadn't, I should have kept the second fleet lieutenant. At that point, I could take the initiative here and just win the game because I would be able to use K2 for 7 damage. If I'd kept the second fleet lieutenant on top of the deck with For a Cause, K2 just wins the game. But I did not do that, so I'm going to have to go this way. So Spec Force Soldier for 2 damage. I'm now threatening lethal, but if my opponent draws that medical frigate, I will lose the game because he will be able to do a huge heal, and that will prevent a victory. He's resourcing, which I think means he has it. I'm not going to resource. Let's see how this goes. He doesn't have lethal on the board, though. Maybe even if he has the medical frigate, I can potentially win. It's going to be tough, though. And he does have lethal if he goes fully for base, and I use Sabine. Okay, so he kills the governor with K2. K2's when defeated does 3 damage to the base, and then Fleet Lieutenant wins the game. Whew. Oh man, that was a closer one than the other two. Ultimately, was still able to get the win. I think in that situation, my opponent misplayed it a bit, but maybe just didn't. I think that my opponent should not have focused on attacking my base and should have instead been clearing my units. It is the situation I think was not as stabilized as my opponent perhaps thought, and I was able to get the win despite a situation that might have looked like it was time to start attacking. It was not stabilized yet, so I was able to get the win regardless. Okay. That was an exciting match. Ultimately, Sabine was able to win, even with my opponent running the 30 HP base. My opponent asks, "Would you play one more with my Vader deck?" Sure. So I'm gonna make this. I'm going to record a different video for that because I want to wrap this one up with the 3 games of Sabine versus Luke for the league match here. But I will potentially record that also, and we will see what's going on there. For now, that's going to do it for this one. Victory for Cunning Sabine versus Command Luke. And yeah, thanks to you guys for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. My Cunning Sabine deck list is going to be in the video description below. I will catch you guys later.